At 75 years old, Victoria Principal sits quietly, her voice softer than it used to be, yet carrying the weight of a truth she has guarded for decades. For years, she refused to speak publicly about Paul Newman, Hollywood's blue-eyed legend, the man whose presence could silence an entire room. But now, after a lifetime of reflection, she finally whispers the words she once kept locked away. Paul was extraordinary, she says, and some memories, they stay with you forever. Her confession leaves a lingering question in the air. What happened between them that she waited nearly half a century to share? And why now? Long before the glamour, the fame, and the global recognition, Victoria Principal was a young girl constantly on the move. Born in Fukuoka, Japan, to a military family, she spent her early childhood drifting between continents, England, Puerto Rico, the US, absorbing cultures, languages, and stories like a sponge. Those constant changes forged a resilience that would later define her. Even as a child, she carried herself with a maturity that felt unusual, almost haunting, as though she sensed her life would unfold in extraordinary ways. But what no one knew was that her journey would soon be nearly cut short. At 18, a devastating car crash left her fighting for her life. Weeks in recovery turned into months, and the trauma forced her to question everything: her future, her path, her purpose. But instead of breaking her, the accident awakened a fire. She moved to New York with nothing but determination and studied acting with the seriousness of someone who had already been intimate with mortality. This wasn't just a career, it was a second chance, a rebuilt life, a new beginning. That new beginning led her straight to the film set that would change everything. In 1972, she landed her breakout role in The Life and Times of Judge Roy Bean, and there he was, Paul Newman, the legend, the star, the man whose presence could make even seasoned actors tremble. Victoria was still a newcomer, barely known, yet the moment they met, she felt something shift. Not romance, not infatuation, something deeper. He had this charisma, she recalls, but it wasn't loud or showy, it was effortless. She didn't know it then, but this encounter would shape her life in ways she wouldn't understand until years later. Behind the spotlight, the truth was far darker and far more beautiful than anyone realized. Hollywood fell in love with Victoria quickly. Her Golden Globe nomination made headlines, and by 1978 she had become Pamela Barnes Ewing on Dallas, one of the biggest shows in television history. Millions tuned in every week to watch her gentle strength, her emotional depth, her heartbreaks and triumphs. Her chemistry with Patrick Duffy became legendary. She looked like she had everything: a dream career, global fame, financial success. But behind the cameras, Victoria felt the old restlessness, the same restlessness Paul had sensed in her years before, because Newman had once pulled her aside, giving her a quiet warning she never forgot. "This town will love you, and this town will break you," he said. "The trick is knowing which voice to listen to." It was the kind of guidance only a man who had lived through Hollywood's storms could offer. Victoria understood later that he was speaking from experience, his own battles with fame, pressure, and identity. She carried his words with her like a secret compass. But even with his wisdom ringing in her memory, Victoria's personal life became a battlefield. Her early marriage crumbled. Her relationship with Andy Gibb spiraled into heartbreak as his addiction consumed him. "He had to choose between me and his problem," she later admitted. And when he died in 1988, she carried the weight of what-ifs that would linger for years. But no one knew what was coming next. Her second marriage, to Dr. Harry Glassman, lasted more than 2 decades, but eventually dissolved under the pressure of 2 powerful careers and a life lived under scrutiny. Through it all, Victoria worked tirelessly, not just as an actress, but as an entrepreneur. Her skincare empire, Principal Secret, turned her into a pioneer long before celebrity beauty brands were fashionable. She wrote best-selling books, guided women through wellness journeys, and built a philanthropic foundation dedicated to animals, oceans, and healing a world she felt was growing colder by the day. Yet, privately, she remained haunted by the lessons Paul Newman had given her in their brief, unforgettable time together. And then came her lowest moment, years later, when she found herself reflecting on the life she had built, successful but complicated, rich with accomplishments, yet marked by losses that still ached. She admitted that she sometimes wondered whether she had ever fully understood why Paul Newman had affected her so deeply. But fate had one final chapter for her to open. Now, at 75, with the clarity only time can bring, Victoria finally speaks. Not in a tell-all, not in scandal, but in reverence. She recalls Paul not as the myth, but as the man. A man who treated everyone with kindness. A man with a moral compass so steady that it anchored her during her most chaotic years. Paul made me want to be better, she confesses. Not for the industry, not for fame, for myself. His silent encouragement shaped her choices, her strength, her boundaries. He had given her something Hollywood rarely gives: honesty. And the truth she held on to all these years was simple but profound. Paul wasn't just a mentor. He wasn't just a legend. He was the first person who made her believe she was more than the roles she played, more than the beauty she was praised for, more than the expectations placed upon her. Some people pass through your life, she says softly. But Paul stays with you. As she looks back now, she realizes that their connection, brief, quiet, unspoken in many ways, helped shape the woman she became. His integrity became her guide, his humanity became her standard, and his memory, she says, remained too precious to rush. Victoria Principal didn't just live a life of fame and reinvention. She carried a piece of Paul Newman with her through every triumph, every heartbreak, every transformation. And in finally sharing her truth, she honors not only his legacy, but her own. They didn't just cross paths, they changed each other. And now she leaves us with one final reflection. What part of their journey touched you the most?